welcome to Brain Chat. I'm Dr. Mitzi Joy Williams, your board-certified neurologist and MS specialist, and my mission is to engage, educate, and empower those affected by MS to become an active part of their healthcare team. Here on Brain Chat, we'll be discussing all things MS, health and wellness, advocacy, and we'll even throw a little bit of music and music therapy in there as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for the next episode. Hey, hey, hey. Happy Monday, everyone. It's Dr. Mitzi, the nerdy neurologist. So excited to be here with you for another episode of Brain Chat, talking about one of my absolute favorite subjects. And this is the first time we're speaking about this on Brain Chat. So I'm really, really excited about the fantastic guest that I have and about the discussion we're going to have tonight. We first like to thank our sponsor, the National MS Society, for sponsoring Brain Chat, and thank all of you for taking your time out to view or listen to our program in whatever medium that you are listening to us. So for those who are watching us live, please log into the chat. Let us know where you're logging in from. I bid you greetings from Atlanta, ATL, where it is hot. All right. But I've got a topic that's even hotter than that. So for those of you or people who know me, know that in my former life, I used to do professional singing. And so music was always my first love. And then I decided to become a neurologist, but I've always wanted to find a way or understand a way to marry my two favorite things, music and the brain. And in the past 5 years or so, I heard of a discipline called neurologic music therapy. And I actually went to several of the trainings. And although I am not an occupational therapist or a physical therapist, I can't be a full neurologic musical therapist. But when I tell y'all, I was geeking out. I mean, I was having the time of my life. I was just so excited to see all of these connections between the brain and music, just talked about scientifically, and actually to see that there are treatments and therapy that can be given to help improve neurologic function. So that is why I'm the nerdy neurologist, because this stuff gets me really, really excited. And I am also really excited to bring up my guest for this evening, Allison Lockhart, who is the Assistant Director of Harmony Health, and she also is a certified neurologic music therapist that has been practicing for over 10 years. Allison, welcome to Brain Chat.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Mitzi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So my two favorite things, I remember when I first entered the field of neurology, decided to do neurology training many years ago, or was thinking about doing it. We really didn't talk a lot about music therapy. Like the extent of what we called music therapy back then was someone playing an instrument, at the end of the ICU that was very calming, but there weren't really interventions, or actual therapy that people were given that involves music. So let's just back it all the way up and let's talk about, in general, what is music therapy?
Yeah, so music therapy, very, very simply put.
Wait, before we do that, tell us about yourself. Tell us how you got into the field. Tell us about yourself first, Then we'll ask the questions.
So like you said, I've been practicing for over 10 years. But before that, I was also a vocalist and a singer and a big music theater nerd there.
Oh my God. We got to talk offline. I am a music theater super duper nerd.
Excellent. So yeah, we'll have to chat. I loved it. But I also had two cousins I grew up with. I'm from a Hispanic household, and cousins are like siblings to us. I saw them every day. And one of them was diagnosed with tuberous sclerosis when she was born, and the other is autistic, and he's on the autism spectrum. So I didn't have any other siblings. They were it. And I grew up seeing those diagnoses and how it impacted their ability to interact with the world around them. And so my little cousin is autistic, and I used to try to get him out of his shell and bring him to my music classes. And I was trying to help him get more comfortable with socializing with everybody and engaging more speech through singing. And he used to be so shy. He wasn't speaking very much. But I started taking him and he started opening up and he sang a full song in front of his peers. And then
Wow.
eventually he did a full performance at a festival in South Florida to over 1,000 people. I brought
Amazing.
I cried. I was on stage. It was supposed to be a duet. He did it so well. I just stepped back and I said, "This is your moment to enjoy and shine." And I'm going to cry over here because it was such a big moment for him. And I was about 16 at the time. And after that, I thought, okay, there has to be a career out there that is going to use the power of music to help these individuals. So I got on Google and I just started doing a little bit of research and I found out about music therapy. And that was really all she wrote. By then, I was about to be entering my junior year of high school. I said, I'm going to start looking into music therapy programs and this is what I want to do. And now here we are.
I love it. I love it. Music is so powerful, right? And we always kind of in general terms or in lay terms have talked about the power of music, the healing power of music. Music is therapy, right? We've always kind of those words have always kind of been in most of our vocabulary and most of our language. If you're feeling down and you need to be uplifted, there's that song that really got you out of the rut, or that song that really described exactly how you were feeling and you were like, I cannot believe that another human being literally is thinking what I'm thinking, and we're not the same person. So when we talk about music as therapy, we certainly understand what it means kind of in the broad sense. But now let's talk a little bit about the actual discipline of music therapy and what that is.
Absolutely. You're so right. We already know the power of music emotionally, really,
Mhm.
and how it makes us feel. But we've learned so much more about what music can do. And so, music therapy, in very simple terms, is using music interventions to work on non musical goals in the context of just a therapeutic relationship, like any other therapy you're going to. We do that assessment, we create goals and objectives and a treatment plan, and we work on it. Except we get to use a really cool tool of music to work on those skills. So we might get to work on speech and language or motor skills, your movement, your ability to walk, or memory and attention. But we get to use all these music activities for it. And it's active music making. The client is there with you, engaging in these musical interventions. So they might play piano to work on fine motor skills or do some harmonica playing to work on their breath support. So the possibilities are really endless there, but it's really motivating. We call it the sneaky therapy because of that.
I love that. And does someone already have to be musically inclined to participate in music therapy?
No, not at all. Because really, the purpose of music therapy isn't to create this beautiful, polished musical product. It's really just to support those non musical skills. And sometimes you do become a great musician out of it. We have some clients that eventually they do a lot of work and they're like, okay, but now I've done all this work. I want to actually learn the instrument. And we're like,
Mm.
okay, we can help with that too.
I love it. I love it. And so there's music therapy, and then there is this newer discipline called neurologic music therapy. Now, I found out about NMT, the neurologic music therapy abbreviation, just because I just was interested in using my friend Google, not to get a degree of any sort, but just to learn. And so I found the NMT Institute and I found that there were trainings. And this was really just so fascinating to me because we've always, again, inherently known this connection between music and the brain. If you hear a song, it's almost like you can relive the memory of where you were. You can remember exactly where you were. So there's always this connection. But what I really thought was fascinating is that, there was this incorporation of things like MRIs, which many of my patients with MS and other neurologic diseases to get to see what parts of the brain are active, and just the thought that by using music, which activates so many different parts of the brain at one time, you could potentially bypass areas of damage and possibly restore function. And so that just kind of blew my mind away. I took the training twice. I probably need to take it again. But tell us a little bit about NMT and how you got involved in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you, I've always been fascinated in the brain and with the advances in technology and being able
Yeah.
to understand more of how music affects the brain. NMT
Mhm.
was really born. And I learned about it my freshman year of college. And I was like, this is it. This is the one. I'm going to
I
go
love
on and
it.
do my master's, learn more, get the certification, the fellowship. And really, what NMT is right now is it's just an additional certification on top of that music therapy degree. So you go to your school for your 4 years, your internship, then you can add the certification, and it just dives a little deeper into music in the brain. And like you said, all the MRI, fMRI, imaging, everything, and really helps us understand not just how we can provide therapy, but how we can work on treating the underlying causes of what we are seeing with music in there. And that's by understanding how music is changing the brain.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So when we think about NMT, so when I went through the training, there was a little bit more research in some conditions versus others. So it seemed like there was quite a bit of research, for instance, for people who had traumatic brain injuries. If there was a fair amount of research for people who had strokes. Also, maybe things like Parkinson's disease, where they had clear difficulty with their gait. Do we know anything about the research related to MS, or is there a lot of research that's going on related to MS and NMT?
Yes, there is. We're actually getting a lot more research. It's expanding. So they've published a lot more studies specifically for MS. They're talking about how music can help with your gait. So your walking, your ability to keep up that cadence, increase your
Yeah.
stride length, have better heel toe gait in there. They're talking more about helping with respiratory functioning now and
Mm.
that pacing of speech so you can have really clear, fluid speech when talking. They've done more studies on music for mood and quality of life and
Yeah.
motivation to keep with your therapies because it can get draining to do all
Mhm.
of that. So we're getting a lot more studies, including those with helping with memory, specifically
Yeah.
visual memory there, and using music as a mnemonic device. Because, like you said, we listen to a song and it can take us right back to that memory moment. But also, how do we learn our ABCs?
It's
We
a song, everything. My kids has so many songs.
we do.
In preschool, I mean, there was a song for everything.
There is. And that's because there's an overlap in the brain of where music and memory is, but there's also some distinct areas in the brain. So that if something's not quite working in the memory center, we can reroute it over here and we compare any information with musical information, and then you're more likely to remember it. So there is getting a lot of research as it pertains to MS.
I love it. I love it because we need it, right? And then I also love the fact that, just thinking about things and helping with memory. A lot of times when we think about therapy, we think about therapy after some type of injury, some type of trauma, and we definitely need therapy in those places. But we've really been exploring what we call prehab, right? So, can we do all the things? Can we exercise? Can we get that memory in good shape? Can we get that brain functioning optimally? So that if we encounter an injury, we're able to bounce back more quickly. So, I think that those are certainly things to think about when we're talking about music therapy and people being involved in ways to kind of keep their brain healthy as well. What other conditions is NMT, or what conditions are music therapy and NMT used to treat?
Yeah, it's across the lifespan.
All
When
right,
you
come
ask
on, lay
the
it on
question,
us.
like, all right. So it's really from premature infants, even. We have an additional neonatal intensive care unit certification you can get. So you can get from premature infants all the way to end of life care. We have music therapists that are in hospice care. In our
Mm,
practice, we work within memory cares as well. So Alzheimer's and dementia. And then really everything in between. From we have individuals that specialize in more the mental health and psychiatric needs. And then in our practice, since we all are neurologic music therapists, we really focus on the neurologic injuries, so TBI and stroke, the neurodegenerative, so Alzheimer's, dementia. But then our big bread and butter is the intellectual and developmental disabilities,
mhm,
neurodevelopmental, and we see a lot of autism in our
mhm,
clinic, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy.
mhm,
So really it's kind of the sky's the limit. You
mhm.
just gotta focus and specialize a little bit on it.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so amazing that something that is such a part of our lives naturally, that we're able to use that as a tool to help people overcome injury. So when we think about kind of a visit, like walk us through a visit, right? For someone, let's say, who has MS and they have gait problems, maybe they have weakness on one side. What would that type of visit look like for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So at first, we're going to do that initial assessment, and we're going to
Mhm,
use a lot of the non-musical assessments
mhm,
that you'd see maybe in your physical therapy sessions over there, or we're going to ask the physical therapist to send us their assessments so we can look at those. But we have some that are within our scope of practice. We're not trying to do everything a physical therapist does, but stay in our lane. And we're going to assess your gait. You might have to walk those 10 meters, and we're going to see what's happening over there. And we're going to check in on that weakness that you might have. And then we're
mhm,
going to develop that treatment plan. So you could come in, and we might start by doing some strength and endurance exercises for your weaker side. So we might do some things with drumming where you have to have a particular amount of force to get that
mhm,
feedback from the drum. So we're going to use rhythm. That's a huge tool for us because how it helps the brain and our motor system. We're going to get a metronome going, a little beat, a click, and we're going to do some exercises playing that drum and have that repetition and get that arm moving, or we might kick the drum. We can do it in any kind of way and be creative
yeah,
to get
yeah,
those going. And then we might build in some pre-gate exercises or work on balance. So we have some of our clients, we have a balance board in the office, and
mhm,
they'll stand on it, and we have drums on both sides of them. And in time to the rhythm, they're having to stretch and lean and hit
mhm,
those drums to work on balance. Or we might put some desk bells on the ground that
mhm,
you tap the top for it to play, and they have to walk through a little obstacle course of lifting that foot and
mm,
the bell to get it. So you're working on balance there, but you're
I
using
love
these
it.
musical instruments to do it. And we're structuring it with like the melody. We might play a scale, your scale from The Sound of Music, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
Uh-huh.
They have to complete it using those desk bells. So the pitch is moving them in the direction to complete that movement. So we can have a few exercises like that. And then we'll move into more of those gait exercises. And oftentimes
Mhm,
that's just getting the metronome going, and we're matching your speed. And then gradually, we're going to increase that by about 5 to 10% to help you get a little bit faster. And your body responds to rhythm, and you naturally match that beat. We don't have to think
mhm,
about it to match rhythm. You hear music in the background, and you kind of just start to tap along. We do it without thinking about it. And so
yeah,
it's kind of that principle that helps rhythm be so successful in helping with those gait exercises, because you entrain at a subconscious level. You don't need to think about
mhm,
it. So we
mhm.
might do that, and then we'll work on some more advanced gait and doing start and stops with it. And all of the music is cueing that. So the music stops, you got to stop your body on there. So it can look very different depending on the
I
day.
love it. I love it. Now, do people get to choose what kind of music they wanna listen to, or do you change the genre, or is it just, more playing instruments? Or, I guess in my mind, I imagine the beginning of, I'm dating myself here, Saturday Night Fever, right? Where John Travolta is walking on the beat, to the Staying Alive, and you see his feet moving right to the beat,
Absolutely.
and I guess in my mind, that's what I imagine when you're talking. But do people pick different types of music? Is there, or are we just really kind of dealing more with the basic elements of the music?
All of the above. It depends on the goal we're working on. So especially if the injury is maybe fresh, if you had TBI or you are really just at the beginning stages of this, we might just have that metronome going because we don't want to overcomplicate it with melody and pitch. The more elements of music you add in, the more the brain has to process and do. So in the beginning, it's nice to keep it simple, but the goal is to integrate more of those elements. And our research says that's best with what we call patient preferred music. So it's the music
Mm,
that you like, and we're going to gradually integrate it. But sometimes it takes us a little bit to get there. And sometimes it's not appropriate to use that music for the intervention because it'll more so compete with what we're
right.
working on. So sometimes it's
Mhm.
better to be simple, sometimes complex. But, if somebody wants rap, we're going to do some rap.
Okay.
If
I can
somebody,
see it. I can dig it.
yeah, I've done a lot of rapping in my day, actually.
I bet you have. I
I
bet
used
you
to work at
have.
a juvenile delinquent center actually doing the music therapy. And so my
Okay.
my catalog got vast for that one.
Okay. Okay. Well, I have an 11-year-old, so my catalog is growing as well as my slang terms. They grow every day.
Oh
So,
my gosh, they're different.
yeah, I get to hear all the things. So when we think about a course of music therapy, now you did a master's in music therapy. Now, are there some people who are from other disciplines that then become music therapists? For instance, like an occupational therapist or a physical therapist. Are there people from other disciplines that also work in music therapy?
Absolutely, they can. They do have to go back to school for
Hmm.
that, and they can get what's called an equivalency degree. So
Hmm.
they don't have to repeat all of the other therapeutic classes they did. They can take the ones that are more pertinent just to music therapy and
Hmm.
add that on. And then they have to still do an internship with some clinical hours in
Okay.
there. They have to sit for the board certification exams. So they have to go through
Hmm.
that process.
Yeah.
But if they do, we have a lot of people that actually are OTs or speech, and they say, I want to add this tool to my
Yeah.
toolbox. I'm going to come
Yeah.
back and do it. And similarly, a lot of music therapists say, I'm going to go and get a master's in occupational therapy so I can add
Yeah.
that tool to my toolbox.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love the integration, right? Because I think so many times in the medical field, we often are really, and I say this all the time, we're really behind the 8 ball, right? People are so focused on medicine, which I'm an advocate of medicine. I prescribe medicine all the time. But I really am also an advocate of thinking outside of the box and what are the things that people can do that can help them, particularly if they're using elements or things in our everyday life that we use all the time. So I think that it's so important for us to understand that there's so many different ways to approach therapy and rehab and improving, and that it's not a one size fits all for every person.
No, it's not. Music therapy is a very innovative treatment and it's very holistic.
Hmm.
And it is something that you can integrate in your daily life. But more so, music is one of the only like natural things that are maybe not an addictive substance that
Yeah.
produces dopamine
Yeah.
um, naturally. So, we know food, we know drugs, all of that will do that. But music also produces dopamine, and dopamine gets things firing in the brain, as you know,
Absolutely.
with those connections. So, it's a great way and a non invasive way
Hmm.
to impact your brain.
I love it. I love it. So let's think a little bit about other symptoms, right? So we talked about gait. How can music therapy help speech? So speech is a big issue for some of my patients with multiple sclerosis. Many of them may have slurred speech because of weakness, so kind of similar symptoms to a stroke. Or people will have basically what we call a spastic, vocal, tone. So how can music therapy help people with voice problems?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite areas to talk
All
about.
right, let's get into it.
But so first we kind of think about the respiration with
Mhm.
that and getting that breath support because as a singer how important that is for everything that's happening with speech. So
Yeah.
we might get them on a harmonica or a recorder.
My
Just
daughter wants to learn the harmonica. She's been begging me to buy her a harmonica. I
like
don't even know where to get a harmonica.
recorder, honestly, no shade to the recorder, but the harmonica you can get some cool blues in there.
Absolutely.
Yes. So we might do some breathing exercises, but using the instrument. And you're getting that feedback from the instrument on if you're successful because you have to get that tone coming out. So you get to hear that feedback. You're doing some breathing. And then for some of the more like slurred speech, we're going to work on strengthening some of those oral motor muscles, the lips, the tongue, everything there. So we have some singing exercises where we are literally playing the piano and we might do a scale to be like, all right, the tongue's got to go up and it's
Mhm,
got to go down. I think of it as
mhm.
like tongue bicep curls.
Yeah.
But the music is cueing it. Or we might do singing exercises like you would see in a choir,
Mhm,
where you're practicing some of those articulatory exercises and practicing engaging the tongue and the lips. But the music is the driving force for that. And when
mhm,
music is driving that, it's providing you with kind of that template and that structure. You know how
yeah.
long you have to
Mhm,
execute these movements with your mouth. And that actually helps you be more efficient with those movements that you are executing. So we might do that
yeah.
or we might work on your volume with that,
Mm,
or your tone of your voice with some singing exercises. And
mhm.
then we wrap it all into a package in the end, and we try to sing a whole song where we have to integrate using all of your muscles, using your breath support, using the volume control and the tone we worked on to be successful in singing a preferred song at that point.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. It's so amazing. I mean, it's just
It's fun.
I know the people who are listening can't see me, but I'm doing my mind blown
No,
expression, because this is just so cool, and I love, to see innovative ways to help people to improve themselves. So, okay, so you have the instruments there when you're getting music therapy. Um, can you do music therapy at home? Is there a way to do it remotely, or how does that work?
absolutely. So, telehealth is a big thing now since
It is.
2020. We had to adapt. Music therapy wasn't really doing it because you're used to having feedback from the instruments and the client playing. But we
Mhm.
learned to adapt, and anything in your home can be turned into an instrument, really.
Give us some examples.
If you got some pots and pans and you got some spoons, now we have some drums and
Okay.
drumsticks
Okay.
that you can use. So there's a lot of things you can use in your home for that. And then sometimes, there's cheap instruments on Amazon. You can just buy a few that are appropriate for you to use. It's really, really cheap, and you can integrate them. And right now I have to work remote, and I'm seeing my clients via telehealth, and it's been
I
really
love it.
successful. Actually, some thrived more with telehealth than they did in person. It just
Mhm.
made it click for them being in home
Mhm.
and working in their space,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
awesome. But also with MS in particular, there's been some research on at home programs. So they
Mm.
do the assessment, and then they kind of create a playlist for them to
Yes.
use for the gait exercises. They take it home, they work on it every day or every other day, depending. And then every week, just have like a check in with the therapist,
I
and we
love it.
see how things are going. So there's really a lot of different ways you can integrate the practice in your home.
So if someone is doing, let's say, a course of music therapy, oftentimes when we send people to physical therapy or occupational therapy, they will meet twice a week or sometimes 3 times a week or once a week. What is the cadence, or how often do people usually meet when they're doing a course of physical therapy, of music therapy?
Yeah, that'll again vary based on the client. When we do that assessment, we recommend a treatment frequency that's going to fit for them, because we don't want to over exhaust them, especially if endurance is an issue. We don't want to fatigue out too quickly. But sometimes, especially in the beginning of any sort of neurologic injury, if you can do it daily, that's better, because right after the
Mhm.
injury, that's when your brain is recovering, and the more therapy you can get, the better it's going to recover. But
Mhm.
that's also not feasible for everyone. So the average is normally one time a week that people
Okay.
are able to come to the clinic. But we do have some that are 2, 3 times a week. It's just dependent on what's feasible for the person too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, because it's a lot. Sometimes depending on your schedule or the
Yeah,
person that's driving you or bringing you or helping you get the computer set up, sometimes a person's schedule may be dependent on others who are helping them.
it's
Now,
true.
when we think about therapy, one of the challenges for many of my patients who are receiving any type of therapy can be the cost, right? So even if their therapy is covered by insurance, sometimes there's a copay. Is music therapy or NMT covered by insurance plans?
So right now, it is considered an out of network
Okay.
provider in the United States, no matter where you're getting it. However,
Mhm.
because of the Neurologic Music Therapy Academy, they've been doing a lot of advocacy for that,
Yeah.
and they've been helping us get more into it. But right now, our clinic is one of, I think, the few, or if the only, in the Georgia area that's trying to bill insurance. And
Yeah.
we do have success once the out of network deductible is met, depending on
Mhm.
policy, they might pay, but you got to
Okay.
make a deductible first. And sometimes that
Yeah.
deductible is so, so high.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't always cover. That's why that's the big advocacy piece in our field, right?
Mhm.
Getting more
Yeah.
coverage for that. And that's why Perfect Harmony Health, the company that I'm with, we're a nonprofit as well. So we do a lot of fundraising to get donors to
Yeah.
scholarship therapy for people. And that gives us access to apply for a lot of grants. So we run a Parkinson's choir twice a week that's completely grant funded and free to every participant. And it's
Oh,
virtual.
I love it.
all over the world doing it. So that's really awesome.
Awesome. I would love to hear them one day.
They're great. Next concert we have, I'll send you an email and let you.
Please, please. And I always, am usually upfront with saying those things, but at the same time, I often say certainly finances can be limited, but a lot of times if we really want to do something, we figure out a way to get it done. I've had people that have done, I'm not suggesting anybody go get a GoFundMe, but I've had people that have wanted to do really kind of, really outside the box things, and they will find that money, to get it done. And so I think that, again, making investments in our health, particularly if it is helping make our brain healthier or may improve function, are certainly things we should consider if we have the ability to do it. And I think it's also very important for us on the healthcare side to advocate to make sure that these services are covered, and that they are accessible, to everyone, who needs to be able to access them.
100%.
Yeah. So how do you find a music therapist? So let's say I'm, I had this issue or I had this injury, or maybe I'm having a little bit of memory difficulty. I'm getting a little bit more mature, or, I have a, brain injury or what have you. How do I find a music therapist or a neurologic music therapist in my area?
Absolutely. So there's two big places you can go. You can go to the American Music Therapy Association website, which is musictherapy.org. And they
Mhm.
have a section where you can find a music therapist and enter your area, and it will give you a list of everybody who is registered with that association. That might not necessarily mean everyone is registered with the National Association, but that's a great place to start. Another good place is the Neurologic Music Therapy Academy's website.
Mhm.
And you can go there, and they also have a find a music therapist search option. And you can look up people in your area. And those are specifically people who have done the neurologic music therapy certification. If you can't find anybody in your area, but maybe there's somebody 1 or 2 hours away, I would always reach out to them and see if they have a referral for someone in your area that might just not be listed on
Mhm.
those sites, or they might have creative telehealth options or other things that they can suggest for you.
Absolutely. So tell me, I always do at the end of every episode. I mean, I can't believe the time has passed so quickly, but tell us what you're excited about in the field. What are you excited about in the field of music therapy? What are you excited about in NMT?
Oh man, I'm excited about all of the technology that's now giving us
Yeah.
access to what music looks like in the brain. When we first started, we didn't have any of that. And so we know we saw results, but we didn't know what was happening inside the brain if it matched what we were seeing on the outside. And so we are really booming with research right now. For that, it's really exciting. On the NMT Academy's website, they put all of the research on there too. So as a new study comes out, they list it and they make it
Yeah.
accessible for everyone. And we're getting so much new information on how music literally changes the brain. They're seeing
Mhm.
engage the brain and create new connections and circumvent damaged areas. And it's just really cool to finally see what we kind of already knew
Yeah.
was happening in there, but to have the proof for it so that we can advocate in the field, so that we can go to insurance and other funders and say, hey, we have this proof for you. We can make this more accessible. So I'm really hoping that that will help us bridge that gap between the therapy and the accessibility of it for everyone.
Mhm. Yeah, I think one of the things that I found so fascinating was looking at the MRI scans, when I went to training, and just, seeing the improvement, right? There was literally improvement in the way that people were walking. When I actually finished my residency, we each had a project. And my project was doing a grand rounds, which is like our big, meeting that we have every week, where somebody gives a lecture. And my lecture was on neurological musical disorders. And
Oh,
boy, did I have a time, looking up those things, whether it was like dystonias or people musicians had, or whether there were aphasias where people were able to bypass, certain areas of the brain. Maybe they couldn't sing happy birthday, but if they heard it, they could recognize it, or vice versa, And so it was really fascinating for me to see that connection, which was a while back, but to see how the field has grown and expanded, and to see amazing people like you who are helping people in real life, I think it's just so phenomenal. And I think we need to spread the message more about this type of therapy and how people can engage in it. And I think once people see results, they'll be really convinced, that this is something that is very worthwhile to fund, and to cover, by insurance companies, et cetera. So I'm really excited about all the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being an advocate for it from your position as a neurologist. It really helps our field because when we go to advocate, they say, oh, music therapist is coming, and they don't know what that is. And so since they don't know what we do, or we don't have the credentials they're used to behind our name, they don't always get it or really listen to it. So it's wonderful that you are advocating for it as a neurologist and going to grand rounds and telling
Yeah.
about it. That's fantastic. So thank you for that.
Listen, I looked at every possible way I could possibly become a music therapist, but it all involved me going back to college, and it just wasn't gonna happen. Like Dr. Mitzi has been to enough school. I am done with school, but I'm telling you, I was
Yeah.
like, if there's any way I can get it done, and I even considered going back to take the classes, but it was the clinical part, and I just don't have time to take off work from seeing my patients to be able to do the clinical work. But I was so passionate. I took the class twice. I took the course twice. It's like a 3 or 4 day intensive. I went out of town. I stayed somewhere, and I was like, if there's any way I could do it without going back to college, I would do it. But I can't go back to college. So I leave it to the experts such as yourself. And I will invite you into our space to help, but I just know I can't go back and do it. So I appreciate
Oh, absolutely.
the
Well, it's
others
great
that
to
do.
invite you into our space to tell us more about the brain. So it's a great partnership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell the people about your practice and tell us where to find you.
Absolutely. So our practice is Perfect Harmony Health. We are located in Roswell, Georgia, but we also have some telehealth options. And you can find us at perfectharmonyhealth.com, or you can always reach out to me. I handle all of the new business and scheduling too and inquiries. So my email is Allison, ALLISON, at perfectharmonyhealth.com. Really simple. Reach out to us if you have any questions, and we're always willing to chat more. And like I said, we are also a nonprofit. So we really believe that just because healthcare is innovative doesn't mean it should be a luxury. So we're
Right.
willing to work with people to make it accessible for them.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to tell the people before we sign off? This has been a fantastic episode. And like I said, this is our 4th season of Brain Chat. And I have been wanting to do this episode for the past 3 years, but just the stars have not aligned for me to be able to do it. But as I said, I just have always had such a passion for music and recognize the importance of it in our everyday lives, and just want people to recognize that this literally is a form of therapy, like not just therapy with you crying and, or being excited or uplifted, but it literally is a form of therapy. And actually, there were studies that suggest that if you learn a musical instrument, it actually can make your brain have more neuroplasticity, makes you a little more flexible. So I'm making my children take musical lessons, although they don't want to. But still, all of the things that we can do to help our brains function optimally are really important. And so I want to make sure that people recognize and, at least know about these disciplines. And if they have the ability to access them, and for us to continue to advocate to make sure everybody has access, because I really believe that music therapy can improve outcomes for everybody.
It really can. I couldn't agree more. You said that beautifully, because
I'm
you're
preaching to the choir, so to
you are
speak.
learning even just an instrument changes the brain. Even after
Yeah.
18 months of playing piano, they found that your corpus callosum, so the connector of the two hemispheres, two sides of your brain, is actually thicker. You're getting those stronger connections. So it's just really cool how it changes it. So I'm with you. It is a real mode of therapy. It's not just about feeling good and feeling happy. It's about doing some real work and making some real progress. So just thank you for allowing me to be here and chat about it, and for your passion and advocacy for it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for viewing this episode. I know that the people will learn so much from it. Thank you so much, Allison, for your time and your expertise, and I'm sure the amazing work you do with patients. And thank you to the MS Society for sponsoring Brain Chat, and we will see you all again in 2 weeks.